He was an long-standing supporter of the society, his work, and he was on the governing council. And he also helped put RS 200 Sky and Earth programme together for us. It ionizes electrons part company from their parent atoms. And ionized gases was what John specialised in. Alongside his academic work, John was famous, renowned, it says here, but let's say famous, for his public talks, his engagement talks. He often used magic tricks to illustrate concepts. The John Brown lectures reflects John's deep interest in the intersection of astronomy and the arts. So we're delighted that Ione Parkin has accepted our invitation to give tonight's lecture, as her work sits exactly in this interface between astronomy and the arts, which John was so interested in. So just some introduction for you. Ione is a practicing visual artist, curator of interdisciplinary exhibitions, co-founder and lead artist of the Creative and Curiosity Art-Astronomy project, which I think we might hear a bit more about. I'm not sure. She is a Royal West of England, and I'm dreading this word because I get it wrong, academician. Is that right? It's close, isn't it? Yeah. Yep. I practiced about 5 times. In the trade, that's known as an RWA. And a visiting, honorary visiting fellow at the School of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Leicester, and a member of the British Association of Planetary. Her artworks have been exhibited widely nationally. Now, I'd like to just read you something. This is an email John sent to Ione and copied to other people in the fact today after visiting her exhibition, and I think it says a lot. So, I want heartily to congratulate the Creativity and Curiosity Art-Astronomy project on creating and presenting such a visually stunning and intellectually stimulating exhibition. As you know, I have long myself engaged in and very supportive of a wide variety of sci art collaborations, using magic, music, plays, poetry, and images. However, I have never before experienced such a wonderful mix of materials and media and techniques brought to bear on creating such a combinations of colour, texture, and 3D forms, which are both beautiful in themselves and intensely evocative of cosmic bodies, surfaces, nebulosities, and events from fusion to impacts. Those are wonderful words from a wonderful man. So we could not have a more eloquent endorsement from the man we're on. So tonight's talk is entitled Exploring Cosmological Phenomena, an Artist's Perspective. Ione will discuss the origins and development and the ongoing progress of the Creativity and Curiosity Art-Astronomy project, which she co-leads with a Scottish artist, Gillian McFarland, who I believe is incapacitated with leg injury at the moment, can you tell me? Give her our best wishes. The artist has been engaged in conversations with astrophysicists, cosmologists, and planetary scientists from institutions and universities across the UK and internationally, including Leicester, Cardiff, Birmingham, Imperial, and the Institute of Astronomy in Cambridge. Richly illustrating the artwork, Ione will draw attention to the art-science dialogue as a widening and deepening process, sharing insights into the creative response inspired by the imagery space and explore the nature of interdisciplinary science, interdisciplinary work and practice of visual thinking. Right, just a couple of I remind you to turn interruptions. Also, get the pictures. I'm going to be doing the lights quite severely to light everyone. You can use one of these to take images, but please make sure the flash isn't on, because you don't want to try to do take a flash picture. And with that,
I also say, in case the event requires, please make way out through the main room. Thank you for that.
Oh, do you want to pin your
Okay.
Yeah.
So we should dim the lights.
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction and for sharing those generous words from John himself. So firstly, I'd like to thank the Royal Astronomical Society and the family of John Brown for inviting me to give this lecture this evening. I had the pleasure of meeting John at the first Hebridean Dark Skies Festival and hearing one of his wonderfully inspiring talks, complete with magic tricks. So I give this talk in his honour and in celebration of art and science collaborations. So I'm an abstract painter, and I've always been interested in the natural environment as subject matter, the formation of the Earth, geological processes, satellite views of Earth from space, microscopic images of organic form, and it was a very natural progression for my work when I began to collaborate with astronomers 8 years ago. The slides are not moving forward. Somebody help me? Yeah. So I have been leading an art science project called Creativity and Curiosity, alongside the Scottish artist Gillian McFarland. We are each developing a body of artwork in connection with a wide range of astronomers, astrophysicists, cosmologists, and planetary scientists. We are fascinated as artists in exploring the fabulously rich imagery of space, engaging in conversations with space researchers, and hearing about the science driving the dynamic forces of the universe. The project began in 2016 when we introduced ourselves to the School of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Leicester, and our network of connections quickly spread to the Institute of Astronomy in Cambridge, to Imperial, Cardiff, Birmingham, and then to the University of Amsterdam and the Institute of Astrophysics in Potsdam, Germany. Gillian and I have been talking with the astronomers listed here, describing our own creative practice and working methods. The astronomers have told us about their particular areas of research: planetary atmospherics, galaxy formation, supernovae, image capture and the analysis of wavelengths of light, gamma ray bursts, exoplanets, dark energy, meteorites, solar dynamics, cosmic dust, to name but a few. We have found a shared fascination with processes of creation, whether it's on a cosmological scale, with the meta-narrative of the life cycle of matter itself, or on a human, personal scale, through the creation of artwork. Gillian and I have been creating a series of artworks as a result of these interactions with space scientists, and crucially, we are bringing the science fully into the realm of art, aware of the importance of staying rooted in our authentic practice as artists, and of giving space to both emotional and cognitive dimensions of understanding. We have been working with a number of partner organisations and have had batches of funding from the Royal Astronomical Society, Arts Council England, and Scottish Institute of Physics. We have delivered creative workshops funded by the Science and Technologies Facilities Council and had ongoing support from the University of Leicester in the form of my honorary visiting fellowship, and in-kind support from various universities and institutions. We have held exhibitions of the artwork in a wide range of arts and science venues to reach different audiences. For example, Glasgow Science Centre for the Moon 50 events, the University of Birmingham as part of their cultural programme for the Commonwealth Games, the Zeitgeist Planetarium in Berlin as part of Berlin Science Week, various astronomy conferences, Space Lakes evening, objects that are part of a shared cultural heritage. I felt a real sense of connection, especially through the extraordinary working drawings of people like John Herschel, son of William Herschel, with these sensitive, meticulously articulated pencil drawings of nebulae. Or James Naismith working in the late 1800s with his chalk drawings of specific areas of the moon's surface, and the early photographic images of Warren de la Rue. There's a tangible sense that artists and astronomers are both trained observers. And these visual representations here, as well as being in the service of science, are creative acts of devotion. And though science has moved on immeasurably, there is something touching about the slow-paced, patient recordings of nocturnal observations by astronomers using the techniques and technologies available at the time. Thank you. During our research visits to the RAS archive, we invited the book artist and printmaker Kate Bernstein, who's here with us this evening, to join us, and she was funded by an Arts Council grant. In her research, Kate was fascinated by the various forms in which astronomers' observations and theories were rendered in early print, and she has responded by producing artists' books, which explore the role of the printed image as a significant astronomical tool for communication and study. In a subsequent collaboration with RAS archivist Sian Prosser, Kate produced this book, Measuring the Heavens, which includes excerpts gathered from items in the library's collection, like Euclid's Elements of Geometry, the notebooks of Caroline Herschel, and works by Kepler and Tycho Brahe. Measuring the Heavens is a literal translation of the title from Johannes Bayer's Star Atlas, Uranometria, from 1603. And this book is now part of the RAS collection. We've been joined at our project exhibitions by some of our astronomers contributing to talks and workshops. This is exoplanetologist Amory Trio from the University of Birmingham at the opening of our 2-month exhibition in Stornoway, which was the central feature of the Hebridean Dark Skies Festival in 2020. We have run various creative workshops to inspire the young artists and astronomers of the future. During our exhibition at the Zeitgeist Planetarium in Berlin, we hosted an evening of talks by 6 international artists and astronomers, including astronomers Tom Howarth, who was then at Imperial, and Noam Liebeskind from Potsdam, the German artist Tim Otto Roth, and Daniela de Paulus from the Netherlands. Daniela has experimented with visual moon bounce technology in collaboration with radio telescope operators in Italy and the Netherlands. The technique involves transmitting and receiving signals of visual information bounced off the lunar surface, and the resulting image is disrupted and deteriorated by this process. To give you an example, here's the original photograph on the right and the moon-bounced image on the left. We both collaborated with Daniela to send images of our artwork using the moon bounce process, provoking thoughts on the nature of gathered and recorded data in relation to visual imagery. A high point of our experience in Berlin was working with planetarium technicians to project high-resolution images of our artwork in full dome format up onto the 23-meter dome of the Zeitgeist Planetarium, one of the largest planetariums in Europe. Our artwork was translated into images of projected light, gently rotating around the zenith point of the dome, a sacred secular space. It was incredible to experience the artwork in this way, expanded onto the overarching ceiling, enveloping the whole space of the inner dome. We were then invited to give a similar presentation at the Royal Observatory, Greenwich, as part of the Marvellous Moons events in 2019, with a live narration by the then public astronomer Brendan Owens. We have been developing a full-dome planetarium film of the artwork, collaborating with Steve Gray, director of Cosmos Planetarium from Fife, who is here with us this evening, Steve is working with full dome technology and a choreographed sequence of our artwork. So these are screenshots of the process shown here working on a virtual dome, and each image is digitally rendered in full dome format, adjusting for the curvature of the dome. We commissioned the composer Alessandra Baldassari, who has created an evocative electronic soundtrack to accompany the immersive full dome film. Within the show, we are creating a visual narrative from cosmology to ecology, moving from the deep space imagery through to planetary forms and environments hospitable to life with these more organic paintings. This image is a screenshot of a still from the film, showing one of my mixed media paintings, and a version of the same painting, which has been digitally wrapped around a virtual globe and emerges gradually and mysteriously from the background image. We have given presentations of the taster version of this show recently at the British Association of Planetaria conference in Edinburgh and at the National Space Centre in Leicester. So here's a few photos of the events, giving a glimpse of how we are combining the artworks, sometimes overlapping my work with Gillian's glass globes. There's some wonderful moments of transition when the images cross diffuse one into the other and seem to melt into the next image. And there's a hover point when both images have an equal value. There is a continuous gentle rotation which introduces movement throughout. So this film has just been shown in Cosmos Planetarium's mobile dome in the Scottish islands of Canna and Coll and in Ullapool last weekend. So we are planning to tour the show to other static and mobile planetaria. I've given you an introduction to the range of activities and collaborations and the background of the project as a whole, which has at its roots the building of a sense of connectedness and cross-disciplinary collaboration. And now I will move on to show you some of the artwork, starting with Gillian McFarland, my colleague on the project. Gillian McFarland has been working with the master glassblower Graham Hawes from Leicester, using experimental glassblowing techniques to produce these exquisite space globes. She's working with ideas about gravity, expansion and contraction, using extreme heat to convert the raw material of silica into liquid form. She's then working with the speed of rotation of the molten glass. Gillian is interested in the juxtaposition of fragility and strength inherent in the medium, and in how the colours change dramatically during the cooling down period. So during the working process, she sprinkles in silver nitrates, sulfur and other substances, which then disperse across the surface in wonderful patterns, patterns which are driven by process rather than design. The process has pushed form and colour outwards into a new sense of order. These are beautiful translucent forms which you can hold in your hands and contemplate planetary bodies, gas giants, or the immensity of the universe which has found an echo expressed in a human artifact. So these images show the entrance to the glass-blowing furnace on the right at temperatures of between 870 and 1040 degrees Celsius, and two of the globes slowly cooling on the left. The glass globes have the swirls, eddies, and vortices associated with atmospheres and oceans throughout our solar system, and even on exoplanets and brown dwarfs in the realms beyond our sun. These ever-shifting patterns and shapes are redistributing energy from place to place, the blend of randomness and order, showcasing the underlying patterns that shape fluid motions. She has produced about 50 of these glass globes, which are sometimes arranged in multiples of 20 or 30 at a time. Gathered together like this, they trigger a complex interplay of reflections and refracted light. Displaying them in multiples creates a tangible sense of the connections within a web of galaxies in an expanding, curved universe. In this series, Sequential Distortions, Gillian took the glass beyond the form of the perfect sphere. Extending the exposure to heat and stopping the rotation, she observed the way that the hot, overpressured region within the form caused expansion. Then when it stopped rotating, it began to distort and collapse in on itself. The forms are buckled and contorted in beautiful, unpredictable ways. Spherical, lucid globes, sequentially distorted, losing their symmetry with every transformation, ending up as something with the irregular form of an asteroid, but keeping their smooth and glittering surface. Gillian refers here to astronomers' use of different wavelengths of light in these uranium glass globes. She adds trails of uranium glass during the working process. The uranium glass only becomes visible when UV light is directed onto it, and this causes certain compounds within the globe to fluoresce. The uranium glass glows, revealing the threads of color embedded in the form. Swirls of material interactions, mixing sometimes, remaining separate on others. Worlds are contained within these orbs. Complexity. In addition to the glass pieces, Gillian produces works on paper, using a repeated action of puncturing the paper from each side. She's interested in the idea of the movement of points in the field of astronomy, observing, recording, adjusting our view of the universe in relation to what is transmitted by radio, by satellite, by space probe, and exploring how we attempt to construct or deconstruct what is known, what is assumed, and what is real. These images bring to mind the tracking of some distant icy object and the plotting of its orbit across otherwise untouched space. The concentric rings of discrete points are much like the features of dust grains being observed in protoplanetary disks, circulating bands of rock, ice, and other particles, rotating and rotating until they gradually become drawn together. These images have a touch sensitivity to them, an almost Braille-like quality, as if we are being invited to perceive the unseen. These works on paper are quiet contemplations on celestial mechanics, on time and space wrapping around itself in a rhythm of repeated action. Gillian is interested in the possibilities of recording data relating to the passage of time. She places large circular metal plates outside for a whole lunar cycle to be worn by time and weathered by the elements. Then she inks them up like an etching plate, producing soft, enigmatic images seeming to capture atmospheric data. Prints like this one were made in a similar way, but using the rust on the plate to provide the visual information. The rust itself has been printed onto the surface of the paper, creating the darker patches suggestive of the mapping of planetary surfaces. Gillian has made a series of these flat field prints in collaboration with astronomer Amory Trio. Flat fields are taken by astronomers to calibrate their camera. If there is anything along the path that light follows through a telescope, it will make an imprint. This can hide valuable scientific information. So these imprints are called flat fields, and scientists remove that information from the night's data. Gillian instead transferred these flat field images onto etching plates for printing, transforming them from technical data to images evoking planetary, nebular, or cosmological phenomena. And now I will share some of my work. So I have become fascinated by ideas about the early formation of the universe, massive clouds of cosmic dust and gas, the filamentary structure of vast webs of color and shimmering light, luminous visions of immensity, of scale and unfathomable distance, and how the raw beauty of astronomical entities can be produced by such violent and extreme processes. I wanted to show here a layering of processes which almost suggest the evidence of past states of matter, of dust and gas and light, of the coexisting dynamics of creation and destruction, driving the life cycle of matter itself. So during the course of the project, I have been gathering responses from the astronomers, inviting them to write about the artwork, questioning the images through the lens of their own disciplines. In the project exhibitions, these written responses by collaborating astronomers are shown next to each artwork. For example, Morgan Fraser from the University College Dublin wrote of this painting: "You can see vast clouds of gas and dust and clusters of stars all thrown together in a great spectacle of cosmic birth and death. The regions of galaxies where star formation happens are violent, tumultuous places. Stars are born, shine brilliantly before dying in supernova explosions. The most massive stars will be tens of thousands of times brighter than our sun, illuminating the regions in which they live. Winds driven by massive stars slam sheets of gas together, triggering a cascade of new star formation. All this chaos and dynamism is captured in the paintings." Or Christian Spearing of the Ice Cube Observatory in Berlin writes, "Dust, gas, light. What do I see here? Remnants of violent processes in the early universe, happening at a time when nobody was there to observe it, an unrecorded story. Crashing galaxies, imploding stars, supernova explosions. As destructive as it looks, it entails the chances for something new. No life without the ash from supernovae which fertilized the cosmos with heavy elements, and no universe without the Big Bang at its beginning." So these paintings have been described by some of the astronomers as being reminiscent of highly star-forming regions that contain a lot of dust and clouds of molecular hydrogen. The images give a sense of a galaxy of early stars whose light illuminates the chaotic clouds of gas in which they are formed. These paintings seem to behave like stills of a moving image, freeze-framed in time and motion. These are paintings that need to be watched for a while, as if giving your eyes time to adjust to their night vision, a sense of the sustained gaze. After a while, the observer has the sensation that the surface of the canvas vaporizes and we enter into the painting, becoming almost a weightless witness here, looking from a suspended viewpoint. So these are part of a group of 5 large-scale canvases, but there's still a sense of each painting being part of a greater whole, a fragment of infinity. A sense that each image could continue way beyond the confines of the canvas itself. In fact, at our Cambridge exhibition, some of the astronomers were playfully speculating on the distance in light years implied here between one side of the painting and the other. This painting, interpreted by one of the astronomers as showing the outflows of gas from the star-forming areas of galaxies. These outflows reach out to large distances, enriching the surrounding areas of darkness with material from the galaxies. Hearing these kinds of responses by astronomers gives me a fresh perception of my own work, which has emerged over long working processes from the depths of my imagination and my instincts as a painter. I wanted a sense of light being held within the painting and emanating from it, where the white of the canvas acts as a light source glowing through multiple glazes of translucent colour. This painting was inspired by a conversation with the cosmologist Neil Tanvir from Leicester, who explained that within the first second a huge change took place in the universe, where matter and antimatter annihilated one another, leaving a small residue of matter and a vast amount of light. I wanted to give here a sense of light spontaneously appearing as the darker material vanishes around it. As a painter, I'm contemplating both the meaning and the mark-making, working to find balance between form and space, light and dark, warm and cool, movement and stillness, certainty and ambiguity, substance and illusion. There's a constant internal dialogue for me between intention and intuition, and a tactile involvement with the medium of paint, the stuff of paint, and its expressive possibilities. There's an editing, monitoring, and decision-making that runs alongside the action of making paintings. Painting involves, for me, a whole choreography of mark-making, where rhythm often acts as the structuring force. There's no fixed focal point, which keeps the eye moving and the mind guessing. This painting is poised between the contrasting states of resolution and quest. So I will share a response here from Lee Fletcher, a planetary atmospheric scientist from the University of Leicester. This image reminded me immediately of the rich blend of colours, swirls and eddies that we see in Jupiter's ever-changing atmosphere. This churning atmosphere reveals bright plumes of white ammonia gas rising above the browns and reds of the background clouds. And he continues, I think of the wispy whites and greys as high cirrus-like clouds placing a veil across the turbulent and dynamic weather of the deeper atmosphere, layers upon layers of fluid flows that all collide, collapse, and swirl about one another. Trying to find order within this chaos is part of the ambition of planetary atmospheric science. This painting was stimulated by conversations with Cambridge solar physicist Helen Mason. Inspired by solar dynamics, this painting radiates the intense heat and turbulent motion of superheated plasma, the fast nuclear burning of hydrogen, creating other elements like helium. So on first glance, this painting has a homogeneity to the surface, but on closer observation, you begin to sense the tonal differentiation and seething restlessness of the image, a multitude of strokes in brighter and darker tones. I wanted an impression of physics at work, of energy moving about, being emitted and absorbed before being emitted again. I wanted a sense of the painting being lit from within and the tendrils of light twisting into an ever-changing, convoluted, intertwining mass of intense energy. Astronomer Anne-Marie Trio states, beyond physics, statistics, and technology, astronomy is about imagination, about being able to conceptualize distant objects and speculate on the meaning of what is being observed. The astronomers applied these same approaches of imagining and speculating when looking at my paintings. For example, Noam Liebeskind of the Leibniz Institute in Potsdam, Germany, responded to this painting. The icy surface of a freezing cold exoplanet is penetrated by volcanic eruptions caused by tidal heating of its interior. These eruptions blast through the surface, spewing dust and ash into the exoplanet's atmosphere. Much of this material will escape the planet's gravity and drift into interstellar space. The thin white streaks in a painting like this one bring to mind the microphysical processes that are going on in hot gas, where atoms, protons, electrons, and light are bashing into and reacting with each other. I'm interested in how astronomers are, in a sense, code breakers, decryptors of light. And they use different wavelengths of light in order to glean different information, UV light to determine chemical composition, for example. And they will use false colors in order to perceive patterns that are otherwise harder to distinguish. So I adapted the digital image of this painting into its negative version and a saturated color version, inviting the astronomers to speculate on what difference the altered color makes to the astronomer's interpretation of the image. The astronomer Tom Howarth, for example, read the lower right-hand image as showing colliding galaxy clusters, with the blue representing dark matter, and the pinkish purple showing X-ray emission from hot gas. According to this perceptual rationale, the saturated color image would indicate a massive shift in scale compared with his interpretation of the original painting, just based purely on the colour scheme. Some of the more recent paintings, like this one, seem to float into existence, hovering in clouds of gases, and if I were to reach into this painting to try to grasp something resembling form, it would disintegrate. So in the back of my mind were swirling images of the upper atmospheric layers of Jupiter. I was challenging myself here to evoke weightlessness, shifting atmospheric conditions, ephemeral states of matter. This recent painting is simply evoking a sense of transcendence, filled with light, a subtlety of colour, and a sense of the sublime. So I have been working recently on a series relating to constellation mapping of deep star-field images. The paper is soaked in layers and layers of inks and spattered with thousands of pinprick marks. I've used a metallic silver ink for this, which gives a glint of reflected light when you move back and forth in front of the paintings. This artwork was inspired by the Wilson cloud chamber images that I investigated during my research visits to the Science Museum archive. The Scottish physicist C.T.R. Wilson in 1911 was the first to photograph high-energy subatomic particles, capturing images of these electron tracks through clouds of vapour. In this group of pieces, I was wanting to create a complex surface of lines and spatters, hovering over lateral layers of dusty material, just beginning to gather and create form. A repeated sequence of mark making, of dots and dashes, hinting at a cosmic language, a kind of Morse code, delineating the interplay of elementary particles. I wanted to connect with a way of perceiving the invisible. Heavy Metals is part of a group of mixed media paintings exploring my interest in planetary surfaces and the dynamic processes of extreme heat, compression, and the chemical reactions of raw elements. To me, this painting feels like a geological sample. The torn, uneven edges give the sense that it has been extracted from a larger section of planetary surface, a fragment of a dense, iron-rich formation, implying the presence of a range of minerals or metals. Creating these mixed media pieces involves a multi-layered approach, including crumpled paper, raw pigments, graphite, and powdered oxidized copper. This is a restless, process-driven image, richly textured through the tactile exploration of materials and the physical fracturing and compacting of the surface. We are looking down on these surfaces as if prospecting from orbit. There is a sense of tectonic tensions, creating a three-dimensional, almost sculptural entity, paying attention not just to the marks, but to the mark-bearing surface. In creating these paintings, I feel as if I can travel vast distances, speculating on undiscovered terrain, retrieving samples of flayed planet skin, contemplating the awe-inspiring beauty of the cosmos, and experiencing, sensing, the tactile presence of an unreachable reality. I'm almost imitating fractal processes with fluid and pigment, exploring the quality of the fracture lines that simultaneously connect and divide across a surface. Chris North of Cardiff University writes in response to this painting: Saturn's icy moon, Europa, has fissures near its south pole from which geysers of salt-rich water escape from a subsurface reservoir. Although much of it escapes into space, some of it will fall back onto the surface, presumably coating the surrounding areas in salt deposits. Perhaps the smattering of white spots is the result of looking at a fissure just as the water was spewing out. Alternatively, seen in the right light, perhaps this painting echoes the hydrocarbon lakes of Titan, glinting in the fuzzy light that filters down through the thick atmosphere. I wanted to create here a surface texture of glacial ravines and fissures, a surface which echoes the hyper-cold regions of other planets and suggests a cyclical history of fracturing and thawing. The title, -210 degrees Celsius, refers to the freezing and melting point of nitrogen, and I imagine vast oceans across a frozen world in the depths of planetary chill. Morgan Fraser of University College Dublin wrote, "It almost feels like you can reach out and touch the features in relief. For me, these paintings are like the surface of some planet that has been shaped by ice or tectonic activity. You can see valleys and peaks, rifts and chasms. Looking very closely, you can even see cracking that could be associated with fractures in an icy surface." This is a detail of the surface of this painting. So one of our astronomers related this painting to the surface of Triton, the moon of Neptune, which has a surface temperature of -232 degrees Celsius and a surface comprised mostly of frozen nitrogen. The Voyager 2 flyby revealed block outcrops, ridges, troughs, furrows, hollows, and icy plains. In my introduction, I mentioned the moon images and models of James Naismith. Naismith produced groundbreaking images of the lunar surface in 1874, in which he conjured the rocky surface by making accurately crafted plaster models of the craters and mountains of the moon. To ensure scientific accuracy, these were closely based on astronomers' maps and drawings of the moon. He then photographed these plaster models, casting light on them at the relevant angles to create a photographic image that appears to be fact rather than fiction. I felt a certain affinity with him across the centuries when creating these physically textured renderings of imagined areas of planetary surfaces, and share his fascination with the materials and ideas of both art and science. I wanted to create here an extended surface of monochrome tonality, where the subtle texture has a chance to reveal itself, and it grows on you the longer you look. It begins to look as if the surface has been cooked. I'd like to share with you a quote from Professor John Bridges of the University of Leicester, who described this painting. "This reminds me of the fusion crust of meteorites formed in the stratosphere as fragments of near-Earth asteroids experience melting in their outermost millimeter." This is evocative of an old, dark surface, blacker than coal, perhaps resembling the surface of a comet or asteroid, perhaps lurking at the very edge of the solar system. The title for this painting was inspired by Professor John Bridges, planetary scientist from the University of Leicester. The southern polar regions of Mars cycle over the 26-month Martian year, and during the summer in the southern hemisphere, intricate and unique textures are formed as ice sublimes in the slightly thicker and warmer atmosphere. Sublimation is a chemical process where a solid turns into a gas without going through a liquid stage. These are also part of the Mars study series. So I worked on these paintings solely from the reverse of the paper. The veins of rust colour cut through the white of the paper surface, rather like the iron-rich earth which is visible through cracks in frozen carbon dioxide at the south pole of Mars. The detail of the artwork on the right appears to show these bulging formations like pillowy mounds of ice. I see this painting as a fragment of charred intensity, a scorched and burned surface that looks as if it has endured the buckling and contortion resulting from extreme heat. This was created by working initially on the reverse of the paper, creating an embossed relief to simulate the impact of subterranean forces on the visible surface, perhaps the result of volcanic activity, or expressing the density of magnetic activity happening in the dark spots on the solar surface. Lee Fletcher of the University of Leicester says of this painting, As the title suggests, I imagine that your inspiration was the lava lakes of Io. As this satellite of Jupiter is constantly kneaded by the intense gravitational pull of Jupiter, its interior melts and gives rise to some of the most violent volcanism anywhere in our solar system. Lakes of lava exhibit huge waves that move slowly across the surface, lapping at molten shorelines. And a frost of sulfur dioxide ice coats everything at night time, maybe producing that white sprinkling towards the bottom of the painting. I was imagining these lakes of lava lapping at molten shorelines and a frost of sulfur dioxide ice coating the volcanic terrain when the temperature drops. So I'm interested in conveying extremes of temperature. This painting is also inspired by the sulfur-rich environment of Io. It expresses a chemical cocktail of different elements which are combining, mixing and reacting with each other, a blend of materiality and atmospherics that could be a solid surface or a toxic, gaseous environment. I wanted to create here a sense of intense geothermal activity where the surface appears to be blanketed by material ejected from volcanic eruptions. Another one in the sulfur crust series, another roughly torn section of this hot, sulfuric young world, turbulent, active, and violent. This is a detail of a mixed media painting. So there is a sense of constant questioning in all of these works. I'm questioning how to convey extremes of temperature. I'm questioning the micro-macro implications of scale. I'm questioning the orientation. I wanted to investigate my own work on a microscopic level. And I was invited to collaborate with the School of Life Sciences at the University of Dundee, working with Alan Prescott to produce fluorescence microscopy photographs. So I created small samples of my works on paper. Each of these samples is 4 centimeters by 2 centimeters, taken from the torn paper edges of my mixed media paintings and gathered together as precious byproducts of the painting process. So each sample has the residual elemental signature of the whole painting and holds traces of the materials used: graphite, powdered copper, pigment, acrylic, ink, oil. The resulting microscopic photographs were not what I could have imagined. I was astounded by the beauty of the resulting images gleaned from micro-imaging of the surfaces of my own paintings. Some of them seem to hint at galaxies and cosmic phenomena. The fluorescence microscopy process involves sending laser beams of light of one wavelength and collecting the light emitted from a longer wavelength, reacting to microphysical particles of paint and pigment. I've always been inspired by the notion of scale invariance, where nature replicates itself on every level, and it's really interesting to see how this is demonstrated even in the deep interior of the physical artwork itself. So I've been using these microscopic photographs to create a series of photopolymer etchings, working with the master printmaking technician, Amy Jane Blackwell of Ink on Paper Press. Photopolymer etching is a process which involves first printing the digital photograph onto the acetate. The acetate is placed on a metal plate, pre-coated with a light-sensitive polymer, and it is then exposed to UV light. So then you ink it up like an etching plate. So these are 2-plate original prints in editions of 10 on 300-gram Somerset satin paper. These images are part of a series of 12 photopolymer prints. So I like the extreme contrast of scale, drawing the viewer into these hidden interiors through an iterative cycle of engagement, worlds within worlds, a microcosm. I'm exploring other ways of interpreting and investigating my own work in collaboration with the photographer Denise Recchia. We combined the mixed media works on paper, placing one of my large canvases in the background, and we experimented with the combinations, the angles, and the lighting to create the appearance of planetary surfaces. I'm creating the illusion that we as the viewer are orbiting another planet. These are speculations on distant, undiscovered worlds, simulating a sense of place far beyond our reach. Recently, I have become fascinated by this meteorite sample on the left, which is in the collection of the Bath Royal Literary and Scientific Institute. So this is part of the Krasnoyarsk palisade, 4.2 billion years old, and is the first of its kind to have been scientifically recognized as having extraterrestrial origins. Composed of iron, nickel, and crystals of olivine and pyroxene, this meteorite was collected in 1779 by Peter Simon Pallas in Siberia. The original specimen, weighing around 630 kilograms, was first described as a meteorite in 1794 by German physicist Ernst Chladni and was donated to the BRLSI collection by Sir Richard Colt. Only 63 pallasites are known, and they are thought to represent the shattered remains of a large asteroid or planet which collided with another huge mass at a time when the orbits of the planets in our solar system were still stabilizing. So I've been working with Matt Williams, the head of collections, who has given me access to this, and I've developed some creative responses to it. So I've produced a series of 6 composite images, and I'm working on multiple aesthetic investigations of this fantastically intricate outer surface, almost an extreme landscape in itself. And on the right-hand side, the inner cross-section, which refers to the blobs of olivine crystals surrounded by the iron-nickel matrix. I've used silver etching ink here, physically embossing the surface, giving a segmented and metallic impression. So these are worked up from photographs I took of the meteorite, printed onto archival paper, torn down into 10 centimetre by 12 centimetre individual pieces, which have then been submerged in various inks and subjected to embossing with photopolymer etching plates and colograph plates. The almost bleached images here are hinting at the entry of the meteorite into our atmosphere, burning up white hot. Or on the right here, being observed and studied through lenses. Again, these surfaces have a physical embossing, drawing attention to their tactile, haptic qualities. With some of the other meteorite samples that I've looked at, the olivine silicate has dissolved through weathering, and the iron-nickel structures are all that remains. I was hinting at that process of deterioration in some of these pieces. I enjoyed working very directly with this fascinating object of cosmic origin, and will be including this meteorite and my responses to it in an upcoming exhibition. So I have been invited to curate a major exhibition for the Royal West of England Academy in Bristol. This is scheduled for January to April 2026. So this exhibition will bring together a body of artwork inspired by themes of astronomy, cosmology, astrophysics, planetary atmospherics, and solar dynamics. The audience's attention will be drawn to the range of artists' responses to this vast subject matter, from the more subjective to the more data-driven work. I've selected 28 established contemporary artists, including myself and Gillian, and I will be borrowing items from public collections. I'm also working closely with Sian Prosser here at the RAS. So now for my final thoughts. My creative practice involves making connections between internal and external worlds, working with the process of seeing, perceiving, and interpreting an external reality, and translating this into the language of a visual, tactile, sensory experience that can be shared. It can be a complex process to unravel the thread of connections leading back to the original source material, inspiration and ideas, the cosmos, states of matter, planetary surfaces, and to convey this effectively to others. Often the impetus behind a piece of work shifts and changes during the playful exploration of the creative process, revealing a mystery beyond the expectation. Both Gillian McFarland and I believe in the value of dialogue as a creative process in itself, the act of sharing, expressing, and listening that occurs between creative minds in search of a sense of shared meaning. Curiosity is a prime driver for us as artists and for the scientists we have had the privilege of connecting with. There is the desire to explore the ambiguities found within a broader pattern of order and to keep alive to a sense of wonder. Christian Spearing of the Ice Cube Observatory, Berlin, wrote, "Creativity and curiosity. Wasn't it curiosity which had driven me all my scientific life? Curiosity to understand how nature works, curiosity to be confronted with something totally unexpected, something not on the standard shopping list of physicists. And hadn't I always felt artists to be my companions in mapping nature, science and art as twin drivers of creativity? This body of artwork reveals a fascinating voyage into the texture of space." The scientists have responded to my work and to Gillian's. They have talked about the importance for them of imagination, of experimentation, and inquiry into the processes of creation, the value of ambiguity and uncertainty. They talk about scale, temperature, and how materials interact. These are things that we, as artists, can really relate to. Astronomy asks some of the most important questions it is possible to ask. And as humans, the search for meaning, in the grand scheme of things, is deeply compelling. I search for meaning through the act of painting. In the silence of the studio, there is a sense of purpose at the core of my work, processing thoughts and feelings, meaning and mark making, creating my own blend of materiality and atmospherics, contemplating time and space and our place within it. Thank you.